Commissioner, how you doing?
Yeah.
Oh, how amazing.
Call this August 14, 2023 policy meeting to order. And where's our agenda?
The proxies here.
All right. So the proxies that I have, in at least right now, so let me know if it's changed over here. I have Mayor Schroeder is the proxy for Commissioner Long. I have Ms. Patillo as the proxy for Judge Brown. And I have myself as a proxy for Ms. DeLisle. Is there anybody else who has a proxy? And didn't let me know when we'll get in trouble. All right, we're good. Let's see that. Thank you, Ben. All right, what I'm looking around is that we do have a quorum.
Yes.
Excellent. And that leaves us to item 2, public comments.
No one signed up, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, no public comments. That leads us to item 3, executive session.
And we don't need it.
I don't see any need for an executive session. So, item 4, report from TAC Chair.
Chad McCowan, CAMPO staff. I'll be covering the report from TAC. A TAC meeting was held on July 24th, and following approval of the previous meeting summary, we had just 2 items on the agenda, including an action item on discussion and recommendation on amendments to the 2023-26 Transportation Improvement Program and 2045 Regional Transportation Plan. Heather Ashley Wynn from TxDOT and I presented this item and led the discussion with TAC. And following that, TAC members voted unanimously in favor of a technical recommendation to the policy board regarding the amendment process and the submitted amendments. We also had an information item for the TAC regarding the project readiness program, CAMPO's corridor studies program. We had an update from our general engineering consultant on the progress of the first studies getting going on this program, including sections of FM 734 or Palmer Lane and FM 973 in Travis and Williamson counties. That's all the items we had in the TAC.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Boy, this is my kind of meeting. All right. Item 5 will be a public hearing and presentation of the amendments to the 2023-2026 TIP and the 2045 RTP. This is Ryan?
Thanks. We were going to do the presentation during item 7, so I don't know if we have anybody signed up for the public hearing or not. Okay. In that case, I think we can move on to next item.
You're doing great.
Then let's go ahead and...
Hey, sorry.
I'm not going to lie to you. This is what I'm missing. Oh, and you said you want to do it under item 7, so let's get out of order and let's go to...
You want to go ahead and do the presentation?
Yeah, exactly.
That's absolutely fine.
Let me open item 7. Discussion and take appropriate action on amendments to the 2023-2026 TIP and the 2045 RTP.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. So this is the summer amendment cycle. This is an out-of-cycle opportunity, and what this is really an opportunity where we bring changes that have been submitted for the Transportation Improvement Program, as well as the Regional Transportation Plan to the board for approval. And it also means there's an opportunity for extensive community outreach, which Joyce is going to talk about. But for a high-level summary of the schedule, we had a amendment cycle application cutoff date on June 6th, at which point we had 11 amendments submitted by TxDOT, at which point we put together an opportunity that ran from June 30th to July 31st, essentially the entire month of July for community outreach. This also included an in-person open house held at our office on July 17th. And as Chad mentioned, we did take this to the Technical Advisory Committee, where it was unanimously recommended for approval. And here today, we also have our public hearing and action item, which will conclude this process. So a couple of things, a couple of key considerations I do want to point out is that we normally have a spring amendment cycle, which we actually concluded in June at the last board meeting. And so this amendment process was really going to take place in the fall, but the TxDOT Transportation Planning and Programming Division made a statewide request of all MPOs to move and adjust their amendment schedules. This is to ensure that the amendments coincided with the August STIP revision, but most critically with the 2024 Unified Transportation Program. the UTP, which is their 10-year planning and programming document that is scheduled to be approved by the commission, I believe, tomorrow. And so they want to make sure that everything is consistent across the board so that the 4-year TIP, 20-year plan, as well as the 10-year UTP kind of all coincide together. And so we didn't receive any other amendment requests for the originally scheduled fall amendment cycle. So with that request, this summer amendment cycle has been moved up and will be considered the last regular amendment process for this year. And I do want to remind everyone that we do take amendment submissions at any time. We have an online application, so whenever an amendment is needed, sponsors can submit those, and then we'll process them according to the nature of the request. And so next, I do want to talk about the 11 amendments just briefly, and then if we have any technical questions, I'll pass it over to Heather. But we did have 11 amendment requests. These are all related to I-35 Central. So we've got 11 listings here, and these are essentially breakout projects, but one thing I do want to point out is that the overall I-35 Central project, the original scope and the original construction funding of $4.5 billion all remains the same. This is all related to how the contracts are going to be awarded over the duration of the project implementation. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Joyce to talk about our public involvement period. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. So as he mentioned, the public comment period was open for basically the duration of the month of July. We received 92 comments during that time period, most of them through email. So we also had that in-person open house that Ryan mentioned. The online open house was open for the entire 30-plus day period, and the online open house included the project list, the maps, the project sponsor information, and then the links to submit comments. So we were able to send responses to the 92 comments this time around. As I mentioned last time, most of these were coming from kind of one email address, but we were able to kind of modify our process this time and our software to be able to respond to those. So with that, I will turn it back to Ryan for a recommendation.
Thank you. So to conclude the item, staff and the Technical Advisory Committee are recommending that the Policy Board approve the amendments as provided in Resolution 2023-8-7. And one thing I always do like to point out is that we always say TIP and RTP, because when we amend the TIP, we automatically amend the RTP so that they are consistent, and that's why they're always listed that way. So with that, that concludes the presentation, and I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Fuentes.
My question is regarding the...
No, you
Press the
gotta,
red button, so
Is it on now?
Yep.
Okay, there we go. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Vanessa Fuentes, Austin City Council. My question is regarding the adjustment for $218 million to the TIP for the I-35 project. Can you share a little bit more about that adjustment?
So I can share, just first to begin with, what is in the draft UTP adds up to exactly the $4.5 billion. What you see in the TIP is the $4.5 billion plus that CSJ that's -388, the very first one there, and that's a preliminary. We put that in there as engineering, not construction. And the reason that we did that is this is the CSJ that we've been using in an environmental document from end to end of the project, and we left it in here as engineering just to be transparent on where we were moving the money from. So that $218 million, I can tell you we've spent a lot more than that on PE. It's just we left that CSJ in there. And what we do in Text.Connect, like if we do an AFA with any of our local partners, there's a standard percentage based on construction that is put for a project. And so if you go and look at that $4.5 billion, that 218 is that typical percentage. That is 100% state money. It's not construction. And we did that just for transparency on where the money was coming from, because we did have construction money on that CSJ, but now that we've gotten more progress on what's going to be included in each construction contract, we've broken those into their own construction CSJs, and we're just moving that same money around.
Thank you. That's helpful context and clarification. Was this change considered by the TAC, the TAC? The Technical Advisory?
Clarify what, ask?
Was this adjustment considered by the TAC?
yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it was a unanimous vote.
Yes, correct.
Yes.
This whole approval, the recommendation, yes.
Okay. Well, thank you. I think it's important to shed light, because I know there were some questions that we were receiving regarding that $218 million and where it was coming from. So it's good to have clarification that that is state dollars, and I guess it is not Category 7 dollars.
Correct. It's not construction. It's just there to show transparency that there was a CSJ that had been there that we're removing money off of, but we just put the engineering on there to just show it for transparency.
Thank you. And colleagues, I realize that this item number 7, this amendment to the TIP, is an administrative item. I will be voting no on this item. I think, and I first want to thank TxDOT for the conversations that they've been having with the City of Austin. I know that there have been significant changes and improvements made to the I-35 expansion and renovation that's happening in our city. As a policymaker of the City of Austin, I have to think very seriously about what we're asking Austinites to do. We're asking Austinites to spend, at least 6 to 7 years in construction, dealing with traffic delays, dealing with construction activity, and as part of that ask, I believe it's my responsibility to do all that I can to ensure that this is the best project possible. And so what I ask and want to encourage is that we continue the conversations with TxDOT between the City of Austin, and specifically around water quality infrastructure and improvements needed to water quality retention and detainment, as well as more opportunity for more time on funding. For us, it's really important that we secure funding for the CAPS to connect our east and west side communities. So there's still a lot more work that needs to be done. And in that spirit, I will be voting no on this, but want to acknowledge that there has been considerable progress made, and I want to thank the advocates, because I learned about some of the commitments and some of the improvements made through this I-35 project, through a letter that was provided to advocates. So our community advocates are doing a great service in raising their voice, and it's having an impact, and so I want to thank them for their service as well.
Thank you, Councilmember. I think we haven't even got a motion yet, but I appreciate you putting it out there. So I have a motion to approve item 7 as presented.
Second.
Oh, no.
I'll make a motion.
Okay. Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, second. Right here. Okay, discussion. Yes, Mr. Tio.
Thank you. Also say it's patillo like armadillo, but it's frequently mispronounced, and I don't mind. But I've been asked by others to say that in the past, just to clarify it. So I appreciated the conversations I got to have too with TxDOT last week, just to get some clarification, and wanted to memorialize one of the questions I asked, because I think it's important in the history of this project, and then also have an additional question. So one of the questions I was asking was, why couldn't these TIP amendments have been done in the previous cycle? Are they based off of a new document that's about to come out, or are they based off of the work that was already done? And I mean, if you want to answer it, you can. I can give my understanding, but I think that that's a helpful question to think about, since this body was sitting here in May with a round of TIP amendments for this same project for the same amount of funding, to help understand why we see this TIP amendment and may see future TIP amendments on this project.
That's a very good question. So the UTP is only adopted once a year. And so what we submitted in May was to align with the August, with the current, like if we sit today, what is in the current UTP is really 2023 until Wednesday. And so that's what we submitted in May, was to get planning consistency for what's in the 23 UTP, which is currently in play, and then this one is to catch up for 24. And really when we catch up now to 24, so the May revision got us in a good place for planning consistency for environmental finding, and then this will get us in the line with the newly adopted, and we're doing this, we call it out of cycle, but this whole rack and stack process that we've been talking about, it's when projects first come into the 10-year UTP, is how quickly can you bring them forward. So this was, like Ryan mentioned, it was a statewide call to to bring project, I mean, this one was in there, but other MPOs brought forward projects that had been in year 11 that just got in and could have brought them in. So that was kind of the point for this amendment. And we're always working to try to get FHWA approval. And part of the leaving the 388 in there was the transparency that we've negotiated with Federal Highways in approving this. And if to go to construction in March, we need them to approve this along with you all. And if we don't do it this month, then we'll have to do it in November, which would allow us to go to construction in March. So we have one more approval to line up with the 24 UTP that has not adopted yet.
Yeah, I appreciate that explanation. I think one of the other elements that I was asking about too was how it aligns with the other part of the process that TxDOT is doing outside of this body, which is the draft FEIS. And so the question I had asked was, were there changes coming to that FEIS that required these TIP amendments, or were these TIP amendments things that came out of the existing draft FEIS that the public has access to? So my understanding was that these TIP amendments are coming out of the draft FEIS that's already been presented to the public, but that is just a further narrowing of the projects that have been identified, identified in there. Is that correct?
I would kind of say that the project has morphed into what it is today. It's always going to have been, what we presented to the public and what it ends up being. That $4.5 billion, we've changed. It actually used to be more because we moved money to north and south. We've been working, when we did the $4.5 billion, we were, 3 levels below grade. And so it's morphed quite a bit, but a lot of the mitigation that you're hearing about is not going to use the 4.5. It'll be, it could be using state money, it could be using other, but this is, and maybe we are working within that $4.5 billion to do some mitigation on the project. But, right now, we have the 3 projects letting next year, and that's really what these are prepared for. Because we have one whole other cycle to determine, maybe we want to break the projects out differently. The hard part is finding this $4.5 billion 8 miles and how to slice it up, but also have 1 year of UTP adoptions, and then the TIP is quarterly. So just making sure that we make the right decisions at the right time. But what's in the DEIS, is very similar to what's in the FEIS, and we're working within the constraints that we were given in terms of the 4.5. And the project enhancements, they're all included in that what we're working with.
I appreciate that too. So the question I kind of asked, I guess I'm just wondering if y'all have any additional thoughts now, is what is it, like when the public and this body comes to these TIP amendments that are breaking out the project into smaller pieces, other than saying, yes, we want to continue having this project in the TIP, or no, we don't want to have it in the TIP, which seems to be the bulk of the comments that we're getting from the public, focus on those 2 areas. Are there other things that can be commented on, such as the order that the segments are happening, or how the segments are getting broken down? Is that something that people could be engaging on in this level?
Did we do that?
Yes. Yeah.
I think I'm seeing a yes, but we'll wait for him to answer.
I'm trying to think if we come in front of this board to talk about the phasing. I believe we have. If we haven't, we can. I can do it the next meeting.
Well, and I think we've heard the phasing. I'm asking the question because I'm wondering, as the public is engaging, what are the things that, what are comments?
What are meaningful comments to make
Yes.
on these?
Thank you.
Yeah. Because I think that's one of the things is like we're bringing all of these changes in front of the public so that they can comment on anything. I know the bulk, as you mentioned, most of the comments are about the project in general. But, the reason we're bringing all this forward is they can comment on the individual pieces as well, whether or not that's, meaningful or not. I think most people's concern is the project, yes or no, in the comments that we've seen out. And Joyce, if you want to correct me on that. But, it's, fully about the transparency and having them the ability, they can comment on the phasing if they want to. That's certainly something, and we can, if we want to work on educating a little bit more on that end, certainly. I don't know if that's something that the board wants to get into. That's completely up to y'all if you want to get down into the details or whether or not the entire project needs to be in there or not, I guess.
So one of the other discussions that we had our visit on Friday, but I also put this in the transmittal memo for the materials. Part of what drove this also was called August redistribution. And that is when the federal money goes out to all the states, usually in August, everything that the other states couldn't spend gets clawed back to headquarters. And then the states that can use the money submit saying we can use X amount of the funds, and then that money gets sent back out, but it has to be recorded both in the Unified Transportation Program and in the TIP for them to be able to use it, and it has to be projects that are ready to go and spend the money immediately. So one of the things I was writing in the memo is this year is an extremely high amount for August redistribution, which is sort of triggering a lot of this. We expect next year and the year following will be high years as well. So one of the things that Ryan and I have been discussing is rather than us getting to this point next year where we're having to sort of all of a sudden try to get something redone, we're going to reach out both to the district and work with the district office, but also work with the administration at TxDOT and ask, can we start having some of these conversations about August redistribution in December of the previous year, knowing it's going to happen in August, and we can get ahead of it, and then maybe we can address this, going to your previous comment, maybe we can address these things in the spring cycle as opposed to having to do it out of cycle. So I would prefer to do it that way as well, rather than have to sort of jump at the last minute.
Chair, if I could.
Yes, Commissioner Trevelyan.
I think that there's a significant amount of work that has been done, and I think that it is always better when we're able to deliberate among ourselves. It seems to me something we've talked about earlier was a standard briefing packet, so that any given project has the who, what, when, where, and why. So if we make changes for any reason, at least we've got the basic policy information that's necessary to consider. And hopefully that informs us in a way that we can share our priorities, our individual priorities, our collective priorities. But it seems to me that a standard briefing packet, something we used to do at the Texas Performance Review, you knew you were going to get certain basic information on any project that came out. So consequently, everybody had a basis, a baseline to work from. I just think the closer we move to a standard briefing packet, the easier these types of conversations are over time.
I think that's a really good idea, particularly, well, let me get Councilmember Alter and I'll give my thoughts. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Going back to Ms. Patillo's point earlier, when will we see some of the recent commitments with respect to drainage and the trail be reflected in these documents, in these plans?
So the FEIS and combined record of decision will be published in the Federal Registrar later this month, at which time the documents would be, the final EIS would be available on our website.
Thank you. But then in terms of these kinds of plans, do we have to then update them again before the spring cycle in May of next year?
So for this right here, if this goes through with FHWA approval, that's all we will need.
Okay. And then how do we track if there are additional funds being committed for the mitigation, if not through these?
So the FEIS and the ROD will include what's being added for mitigation, and there will be no more after that.
Okay, so we have the TIP and the UTP, and then the FEIS ROD mitigation is a parallel discussion. I mean, it's not all going to be in one.
So the final document that's published in the Federal Registrar will commensurate, if you will, our mitigation that we'll be doing. There's a lot of things that we add to the project that we don't label as mitigation through public comment. So those are the commitments on mitigation that we have in there. We actually have a table in the back that shows, what we're regulatorily what we're supposed to in there, benefits to the project, and then what we term mitigation. So there's three kind of different areas there, and we wouldn't be adding any more mitigation, but we could in benefits or just changes to the project through public comment pass the rod.
And do those come back to this body at all?
For changes to the design?
Just, is there a review stage that we have a role to play in?
I see where she's at.
So we're just now scoping our designers to do the final design, and they might come in and decide to do a different kind of phasing to where we might need a new CSJ. But again, until we sit here and tell you differently, we're working within the 4.5 through the projects that let in 23 and 24 and 26.
Okay, so is it possible that any of that additional money that's coming through in August can help fund, or through the money that you are mentioning?
The August redistribution.
For the August redistribution, thank you. Is that any of that available to help fund the mitigation or these other aspects, or where does that pot of money come from?
It could, council member, if that's up to TxDOT. We don't see that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Wow.
I do have a comment, Mr. Chair, if we're ready to
Yes, Mayor.
continue that. Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to address the hundreds of people that have written in various forms on this question, and I read them all and have not responded to many of them. But I thought most of them very, very thoughtful, and I think we're all probably pretty grateful for that, because I think all of us here probably believe that the more people participate in local government, the better it is. And that's how most of us got started in this in the first place. I found a lot, I had trouble disagreeing with a lot of things in those emails and comments and questions and calls. If we're going to spend billions of dollars to address traffic in Austin, there probably are better ways to do it. But that's not the deal that's on the table. That's not what's been in what worked for several years. And I really appreciate what TxDOT's done to further improve this project, to widen the different modalities and mobility options. And so I'll be voting for it, but not without reservation, and certainly not without empathy for the people who are going to lose their homes, or who made very, very thoughtful points about the importance of mass transit in our region. So just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other questions? Okay.
We were just commenting that we appreciated the mayor's comments. We all received a lot of emails, and I think they're all very passionate and well, thought out. And we just have a lot of work to do all around the region to make sure people can get around safely. It's not the only project, and we need to add more transit. So there's just a lot to do.
And Commissioner, I love the way you put that. So I wanted to wait until the end to give my thoughts here. So I was here originally from the original vote on this several years ago. And it was quite an interesting spectacle. I'll leave it at that. Various different viewpoints, ideas were given, debated, presented. And I know, to be frank with you, and the public didn't know, there were a lot of hard feelings in that. There was a lot of hard feelings in that discussion from right there as well. And to see where we are today, to be able to go ahead and see where we're moving forward, and we're trying to address issues that are truly, in a lot of ways, let's be blunt, systemic. I'm one of those people, I'm one of those kids that you got here 26 years ago going to the University of Texas. And I would be lying to you if I didn't tell you I was utterly disgusted and appalled to find out, just to see what the divide was of I-35 and seeing what that did to true communities, divisions, destructions over there, and the alienation of people involved. Being on this board and being able to see that you have people from all 6 counties getting together to understand that the need to try to fix issues, address things holistically, not just for our specific jurisdiction, but looking at it as a whole speaks volumes about where CAMPO is today and speaks volumes about each and every one of you. No one is saying this is perfect. I'm saying it's going to ameliorate everything you do. I always remind people when it comes to roads, you only have two ways to do it, through taxes or tolls, and I don't think you want to put a toll on every single thing that you got going on over here as well. But we know that we have to move forward, and we know that for too long we've been just left in our own quagmire of arguing and complaining about things and not doing things about that. What's good is to hear about the mitigation efforts. What's good is to hear about ideas about how we can be better involving our public and our citizens by having packets and ideas to be able to address the specific issues. I love hearing about what you were talking about. What are we doing regarding some of those other aspects? Because that's key to say, hey, listen, I don't like this part right here. What am I going to do to be able to help hear my voice being heard on these things? That's important. Mary, you put it best. Democracy works best when everyone's involved and you hear the people's voices. I did read each and every one of those comments. Didn't appreciate some of the ad hominem attacks, but it is what it is. We're in government, so it is what it is with that. But ultimately, I'm proud of this board. I'm proud of TxDOT. I'm proud of your respective entities. I'm proud of CAMPO, where we are moving forward on this. So, do I have a call to question? Okay. All right. All those voting yes on item 7, please raise your hands. Okay. Does everyone have? Okay. All right. All those voting against?
I'm sorry. I was actually voting against.
Oh, okay.
Just to register. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Chair, I'll abstain.
You abstain? Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Okay. All right. So I hope somebody's keeping count of this stuff besides the video. But what I saw is that I saw 2 noes, 1 abstain. And there it is. All right. The ayes have it. Thank you. All right. Item 8, keeping us financially sound.
Do we need to go back?
Oh, yeah. I forgot. Yeah, well.
We can do that after.
Yeah, I want to do it afterwards at the end because we do have a comment on that.
I'm going to tell Cynthia you took things out of order.
Ixnay in front of the camera A.
Good afternoon, Teresa Hernandez, CAMPO staff. Our fiscal year 2022 single audit was completed on June 28th, 2023. There were no findings in our audit. This was the audit that, our fiscal year that ended September 30th, 2022. I have Mr. Montemayor here who can answer any questions and will be giving the results.
Okay. Mr. Montemayor. Is Z here? Question mark?
I did see him.
Because we have a whole bunch of questions. I mean, a whole bunch. Oh, yeah, you're up.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here. Turn the button.
Hello, thank you very much. Happy to be here to present your fiscal year 22 audited financial statement. We completed that audit and issued it a couple of months ago, and happy to be here to tell you that all of the reports are clean. There are 2 documents in that package, actually 2 separate documents. One is a communications with those charged with governance. Everything in that communication is standard, nothing unusual and no negative items noted in that report. I will tell you that in that report is where we would disclose significant deficiencies or weaknesses in your internal controls. We did not report any. There's a qualification on that. The audit is on the financial statements, not on your internal controls, but we are required by the standards to report weaknesses or deficiencies if we encounter them during the audit. Happy to report we did not report that. As far as your financial statements, we're issuing 3 letters, 3 signed documents from our firm. One is the basic financial statement audit report, in which we have concluded our audit and are issuing a clean opinion on your financial statements. In our opinion, those financial statements are materially correct in accordance with the accounting principles and meet all the required disclosures and generally accepted accounting principle presentation. There are 2 reports in addition to that because of your federal funding. One relates to government auditing standards, which is covers the organization in general. And there are 2 topics there. One is internal control. We've already talked about a little bit about internal control. The government auditing standards require the same type of reporting. If we identify weaknesses or deficiencies, they would be reported there. We did not report any. The government auditing standards also have another section for compliance, which is a broad organization-wide with all laws and regulations. And based on our audit, we are not aware of any non-compliance. We did not identify non-compliance. That's the government auditing standards. Then there's a 3rd signed letter from our firm that relates to specifically the federal dollars and even more specifically the major programs, which there's some definitions on what that is. So we're required to perform an audit of your compliance with your use of those federal dollars. And in addition, we also talk about internal controls. So in our opinion, based on our testing, you complied with all the significant aspects of your federal funds requirements related to those grants. As far as internal controls on that letter, it's same as the 2 that I've mentioned before. It's not an audit of your internal controls, but we are required to report deficiencies or weaknesses. And in the previous, as I mentioned in the previous occasions there, we're not reporting any deficiencies or weaknesses. Any questions?
I always love how you use the magic legal words that need to be said regarding an audit, so I really do appreciate that. Board, any questions? Yes, council member.
Thank you. I appreciate the recognition. I just wanted to say I really appreciate your presentation and the way you danced around in a fancy way, tangoed around some of the intricacies. I think to some degree, some of this information is just so technical that it's difficult to dig into. One of the questions that I have is, so at the end of the day, when we talk about this audit, how does the general public receive the information?
Well, that's up to you all how you disseminate that report. Our reports are presented to the board of directors. You have some requirements of how they get reported to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse on your federal funds, so that report gets submitted to the Federal Clearinghouse. How you disseminate that as an organization is entirely your policy.
So to his point, Chair, I guess my question is to you, how does the general public receive this information?
I think Ashby was about to answer.
So, Teresa, right now, is the audit on the website at all?
The audit is not on the website right now. It is, if you go to the Federal Clearinghouse website, you could just type in Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, and the audit reports are listed there. But we can always put them on our website as well.
I would appreciate that. I think from the information that I receive from my constituents, they would like to be more involved. They feel excluded. And I think the exclusion is because this information is relatively obscure, but they want to be involved and they want to know. So if we could just make sure that the general public has access. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Great point, Councilmember. Any other questions? All right, I think you're getting off lightly, but thank you for being here today.
This is the toughest presentation I've made in the last several years. In one year, I wasn't even asked to come up. They said, okay, thank you, the audit's done, see you all later. But it's my pleasure anyway, and thank you for the questions. I appreciate that, and best wishes to this organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Let's go back to item 6, where it's discussion, take appropriate action on the June 12, 2023 meeting minutes. The reason why I wanted to do it toward the end was because Miss...
And I have a correction on that.
Oh, I was going to let her? Okay.
Oh.
Either one of you. Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So, Mr. Chairman, there was a statement in the draft minutes that were sent out that said Judge Brown had entered the meeting. We caught that, and we were notified by Travis County staff about that. We've made that correction, so the approval that we're asking you to approve now has that deleted.
Okay, so there doesn't have to be a friendly amendment. It has the specific approval there. Okay. Do we have a motion? Okay.
Second.
First and second. Okay. All those approval, put your hands up. Aye. Anyone oppose? I find it quite curious if anyone abstains. So, okay, we should be good. Item 9.
I actually don't have anything to report this month. Well, we didn't think we were going to have a meeting until we found out how the amendments. I'll make up for it next month.
Okay. All right. That leads to item 10, and you guys are, I'm going to stay on your good side because we're already over here. Something we always talk about is making sure that we have the evaluation of our executive director in from each and one of you. It doesn't help any of us if you don't participate. So please, I mean, I know we all have some really, really bad things to say about Ashby, so please go ahead and offer those. And I know we have some really, really good things to say about Ashby too as well, so please offer those. But in all sincerity, oftentimes we're asking, saying, please give some information input on that. Please make sure you actually participate in that. I really do appreciate that. The next TAC meeting is August 21st, 2023 at 2 p.m. Our next meeting is September 11th, 2023 at 2 p.m. And I know that the great mayor from Cedar Park wanted to give some comments before leave, and then I'll give some comments after that.
Before he goes, you just said the TAC meeting, it looks like on here it's been canceled. Am I reading it wrong?
No, I turned off my own mic. No, we're going to issue a memo instead.
That it is off or on?
The meeting is off.
Off.
Oh.
So this got printed before you.
Oh, okay, there we go. I was like, wait a minute. Okay, Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, Rudy. I asked the acting chair just for a minute, because since we have so many of us together here, this is the first chance I've had to thank each of you on behalf of your various cities and jurisdictions for the support to Cedar Park during our wildfire last week. As you may know, it was pretty awful. Could have been much, much worse. I want to say fortunate that no one was seriously injured or killed, and the damage was limited. But I think that's just a testament to how well our fire departments and emergency services work together. I look around this room, I see, and that Tuesday night saw trucks from almost every city that's here. And the ones I didn't see, I know, like the ESD down in southeastern Travis County came and backfilled our stations so our firefighters could be there. So it was a beautiful thing to see, frankly, and a reminder of why regional groups like this are so important, because our region is going to continue to have more and more environmental challenges. We know this. It's more dangerous than ever, and it's going to get worse. And cooperating is just irreplaceable. So thank you all, and please relay that to your first responders.
Yeah. Well, Mayor, I think those comments are shared by everybody, and I think that in particular, when we're talking about a perspective, a regional viewpoint, and partnerships that necessarily weren't there several years ago. They're here now, and they're here to go ahead and work with each other regarding the various different issues. Our constituents don't just stay in one jurisdiction, at least do we, so we need to make sure that we stay on top of that right there. With that said, one thing I just want to say, before we clear out for today is that I would highly suggest if each and every one of you just take time to go visit each other's jurisdictions. I can't tell you enough how big of a difference it makes when you're sitting somewhere in Burnett County hearing what their citizens have to say about things, or you're going out to Lockhart and seeing what the issues are out there, going out to Bastrop and going from there and seeing these are things. So there are same things in Williamson County and same things in downtown Austin. When you're able to go ahead and truly meet with your fellow board members, hear what they see what they see, and experience that perspective, it makes all the difference in the world when you're sitting here on this dais. And we know that we're blessed to be able to go ahead and have the opportunities we have today to be able to go ahead and work and make a difference in these areas. And I would just really, really suggest that you take time to go ahead and do that. With that, yes ma'am, council member.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say thank you for leading today's meeting. You did a fantastic job, and I really appreciate your leadership, so thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
For all of us who have school-age children and/or grandchildren, you're welcome. Summer's over. The kids are back in school. Your refrigerator has food in it again. Bam, bam, bam. And I just wanted to wish our scholars who are going to AISD today, I hope that they have the best day ever. I have a rising 8th grader, and I have a kid going to high school.
Oh, wow.
I had to whisper that. Did you hear me? Whisper it. So I just want to wish everybody, when your kids come home today from their first day of school, I hope everybody had a great day. Thank you.
Thank you for the words, council member. And for those who haven't started school yet, like in Pfluger ISD, be ready. The parents will be apparently partying tomorrow for that as well. And when we return for our next meeting, the Longhorns will be 2-0 and have just beat Alabama.